What's up, Badger fans? Let's talk about another quarterback visiting Wisconsin, a big-time arm, big pocket passer. We're going to talk about it next on Locked On Badgers. It's showtime.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this your first listen every single day. I really do appreciate it. Today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. We got Brian Smith on today, which I'm really excited about because a certain quarterback that he knows very well, Tyler Van Dyke, visiting Wisconsin, entered the portal, saw 3 years of him at Miami. Let's just start there. What was the Van Dyke experience like?
How many different roller coasters are you familiar with?
Couple. How about you?
About 100. And the ones with the highest hills and drops are the way I would define Tyler Van Dyke. The first 4 games this year, if I remember right, PFF had him as the #1 quarterback in the nation. How'd that turn out? So he also had a 5-game stretch with 11 interceptions. I mean, literally polar opposite ends of the spectrum. He was banged up some, but these are still decision-based problems. So let's go over the basics before I get into his stretches and express them. Number one, huge guy, 6'4", 6'5", 230. He's an NFL-sized quarterback, not in question. The arm, unless you're physically on the field to see it, I mean, it looks good on TV, believe me. On the field in front of him, standing next to him, it is legit. When he lets it go, he can throw the deep out, far hash. He's one of the rare guys that can do that. The other thing that he's not afraid to do, it doesn't matter what the situation is. You can ask the Texas A&M DBs that got smoked. If you play man coverage, even in 3rd and short, we're going up top. He does not have any problem being aggressive, but that also bites him, and I'll get to that in a second. The thing about him that's really unique, he played in an offense that was still run first, even though they hit a lot of big plays. His demeanor really didn't change. He showed maturity because a lot of guys with his arm and his experience would have wanted to throw it a little more, so that was good. But when teams got after him, sometimes he would make some bad throws, and here's the conundrum. Teams saw what they did to A&M, and A&M was dumb. They just kept bringing guys up, and they just went over the top. They killed them. When you play cloud, meaning like cover 3 and stuff like that, sky, cover 6, whatever, just you're going to throw in front of us or you're going to get picked. He couldn't do it. He forces the ball down the middle of the field. The Georgia Tech game, I remember being on sidelines. There was a play, and he threw it up. I'm like, what is he doing? Like, the ball's halfway. I'm like, there's no way, because it was way late and down the middle, and it was a moon ball. I'm like, this is terrible. Of course, it went the other direction. He had 3 of those. You cannot do that. For whatever reason, he doesn't have the patience to hit the check down. I probably said this on this show in several. I know I've said it on several. Phil Simms, the old school quarterback, played for Parcells with the Giants, got Super Bowl rings. He said, if you want to rack up yards in the NFL, there's one surefire way to do it. Throw checkdowns. You'll move the sticks. Your quarterback coach will be happy with you. Your head coach is mad. A lot less because you're not turning it over, etc. Well, apparently Tyler has not met Mr. Simms. So that's the concern I have. Now, as it relates to Wisconsin, and I'll just answer this before you ask, he is a great fit for the scheme if he can get over that hump, because he can throw for 3,500 yards next year, assuming they pick up a big play. I have no idea who Wisconsin's after their portal. They got to get the quarterback first, though. Those receivers aren't coming. If they get the right guy, that system, man, he can go bonkers because it's proven. The OC at Wisconsin was at North Carolina with Drake. Man, I mean, they've proven what they can do. So now let's see if they can figure out a way to take that next step and get a guy like Van Dyke and maybe resurrect his career.
You mentioned a couple things that when you watch any type of film on Van Dyke, the size and the arm, they stand out, as you mentioned. In baseball, they call that easy gas, right? A pitcher that can throw 97 he has easy gas on the deep ball. Like, it's impressive. And this is from a Wisconsin offense that really struggled pushing the ball downfield last year. Tanner Mordecai just didn't have it. So the problem is, you brought it up, the turnovers. Is that correctable at this stage of his career? Because we're not talking about a young quarterback anymore.
It depends on one's perspective. I mean, literally, it's something that's as easy as just, I'm not going to do it anymore. Because some of them, he wasn't even pressured.
Mm-hmm.
It's just he was ticked that they just kept playing deep coverage, and he didn't want to. And they got running backs you throw it to. They make guys miss. I mean, they got a deep running back room. Instead of 2nd 6, sometimes that's 2nd 1. They're going to run over somebody or make somebody miss, and he would pass on the check down. Tight end right there, whatever. Maybe he would throw a 20-yard pass instead of a 4. It's okay to be in 2nd and 6. He struggles with that. And that's why cover 2 and cover 3 have never went away, because there are tons of guys like Tyler that has zero patience, is what it is.
What about the mobility? So he's not a statue, right? Like you see him
Correct.
where he scrambles in the pocket, but he's certainly not Daquan Finn, who we've talked about as well.
Oh, no. It's interesting. He ran some RPO in the system that Shannon Dawson runs. He was at West Virginia when they put up all those yards in 2012, 13, 14, like when they just killed it. He was there. Then he was at Houston when Clayton Tune, etc. Tune had over 500 yards in 2022. So he'll let a guy run. And I was curious. I'm like, maybe Van Dyke will get 100 yards this year or something like that. He got banged up a little bit, so he didn't run as much as I thought he might. But there were a few times where he pulled it on RPO, and, of course, DN just crashes. He's not going to run. He's just a big, tall, white guy. Well, around the end he went with, and the grass isn't going to make the tackle. So, I mean, his deception is good with the ball fake. That's the most important thing. And then sometimes they would just rush 4 and drop 7, and they'd, like the middle, would play Tampa 2 and drop like a free safety. That's free 10 yards. Even if you're punting, it still adds your, it's better for your field. He can do that. So, yeah, 3rd down and 2 or 3 or something like that. If you don't have a spy or somebody staying in the rush lanes to get to him, he can gain yards. So it's a weapon in a certain situation. And when it was a bigger moment, he was more apt to go get the yards.
We talk a lot on this show about the fit for Wisconsin. Should Wisconsin go after a player X? And it could be Van Dyke or anybody we talked about. Does this make sense for Tyler Van Dyke, to go to Wisconsin?
Well, Longo is, if it wasn't for him, this conversation that you and I are having now would not be taking place. Mm-hmm. What did he do with May? Redshirt freshman, killed it. I mean, if it would have been possible, although the rules do not, May would have just left after 1 year because he redshirted, didn't play. You got to be 3 years removed. He was ready. Who coached him? I mean, if that's not appealing to a quarterback, it's kind of hard to understand. And to be honest, it's really ironic. His offense and Dawson's really aren't that much different in terms of the run-pass balance. Maybe some of the formations and a little bit of how they do it, but it's very similar because Miami's still pretty run-heavy, power run. Up the middle, we want to be grunt, or kind of like Wisconsin old school and run the ball. Takes a lot of Miami fans off, but that's another story. And they play action off of it. Miami's got receivers. I mean, it's not any newsflash. So play action on 3rd down and 3 was open a lot. And that's where Van Dyke, when he was rolling, there were games he had over 10 yards per attempt. I mean, they were murdering people. So if you give him a chance, you're going to want the run game going. He's familiar with that kind of scheme. I don't think it'd be a big adjustment. That's the big appeal to me looking at from Wisconsin. And I'm just going to say this now. Who else are you going to get if you're Wisconsin?
Well, we're going to talk about that next segment. We're gonna rack and stack them with you. But I do want to ask you this. One of the things, and you've obviously watched a lot more of him than I have. I was impressed by the ability to stay in the pocket. The interior pass rush, he'll step up. I was pretty impressed by that. What's the ultimate upside here? Like if he comes to Wisconsin and he cleans it, how good can he be in the Big Ten?
It depends on the players that they get at receiver and tight end. I have no idea. And the other thing for him, and it would behoove him if he did this now, the sooner you announce, the sooner somebody else you can pull with you. Colby Young is in the portal. It's one of Miami's receivers. Maybe he goes to Wisconsin. Colby Young had like 9 touchdowns or something over the last 2 years. I'm sure Wisconsin would like a 6'4", 215-pound receiver that can stretch the field. I'm just going to go ahead and speak for you now. Just no offense, Ryan. I'm going to do that for you. Speak for the Badger fans and Badger Nation.
No, we'll take one. Can we get 2? Is it like a daily double? Can we get like
– You're going to have to pay me a lot to find one of these Florida kids that'll go to Wisconsin, but I'll see what I can do.
Let's do it. Let's figure it out. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Then, like I said, we're going to I want to ask a few more questions on Van Dyke, but we're going to kind of rack and stack some of the quarterbacks Wisconsin's been after. Who does Brian like the most in that group? We're going to do that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for friends of the show. A quick second, as always, to say thank you. But today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at eBay Motors. eBay Motors has simplified the car parts buying process. You no longer have to go in the store and talk to a guy who doesn't really know, and he's just there to, and you're trying to explain what you need, and he's looking in his warehouse, and he may not have the best part, and it's just a mess. It is a smorgasbord of nonsense. You go to eBay Motors, you get the right parts, the right fit, the right prices. It's guaranteed over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die car or vehicle or truck. That's why eBay Motors is the best spot for all your auto parts, all your car processes. It's there for you to make your life easier. And that's what life is all about, finding things that make your life easier. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit is only available for U.S. customers. All right, let's bring Brian back on. Brian, before I talk about these four quarterbacks Wisconsin's been linked to, I want to have one more follow-up on Van Dyke. What kind of kid is he on Van Dyke? Like, what is he like?
After the spring game, I'd never spoken to him, and I'd been put on the beat to cover Miami, and I'm just out on the middle of the field, and he's kind of staring. I walk up to him, I was like, "Hey, what's up? Hey, man, how you doing?" It was like me and you going out for a beer or something. I mean, he knows, he's savvy, but he didn't know me personally. We're just talking. He's pretty chill. He was good around the fans. He's done pretty good with the media. I think he'll fit in because he's pretty low-key. So I think it's a good fit from a social standpoint. He's actually from the Northeast, so snow and weather are not a big deal to him. He's not a Florida guy. He just ended up at Miami. I think you're looking at a kid that would do well, no matter if he played in Texas, Wisconsin, if he went to Oregon, it wouldn't matter. He'd figure it out. Pretty smart guy.
Because that's always one of the big – I think there are a lot of positions it's not that big a deal, but if you're bringing in a veteran quarterback –
yeah, it is. You're right.
He's got to be between the ears. He's got to be good.
Yeah, that won't be a big deal.
Okay. So let me throw a couple names out here. I want you to kind of rank these guys for who you think Wisconsin should go after the most. Who should they prioritize? We talked about Van Dyke. We talked about DeQuan Finn on the last show, the athletic Toledo quarterback. They kicked the tires a little bit on Kyle McCord. They reached out to Cam Ward, but we're going to put him in a separate, if it happens, amazing, but that's not likely basket. Out of those three, McCord, Finn, and Van Dyke, who do you like the most in terms of going to from a fit standpoint? Who would succeed in Madison, do you think, the best?
I think Finn or Van Dyke. McCord, I just don't know how to rate him because he didn't run much, which I don't think helps Wisconsin. They need somebody who's going to run at least a little bit. He can't, but it's just not his bag. And he had Marvin Harrison Jr. to throw to bail him out a lot. Yeah. And their tight end was nasty. Like Notre Dame took away their two receivers in the tight end murder. They had guys, and they still couldn't quite get over the hump. They weren't the same. So I'm not sure. Like against really good teams, I just don't think he's going to make much of a difference. But he's still better than what Wisconsin had, too. So if you got any of the three, you'd improve. The one that's the most boom or bust to me is Finn, and here's why. Not the biggest guy. I worry about the durability. Look, he has to run, but if he runs, he's going to get hit a lot. It's just kind of like Wisconsin is playing against, do you think Iowa's linebackers are nice guys?
No, off the field, they're probably incredibly nice guys.
But on the field, so that's my concern. By the time he gets to the Iowa game, is he even 70%? He's not the biggest guy. I would lean Van Dyke and take the chance because he's a bigger dude. He's been banged up some too. But, one time he hit a helmet in his hand. Screwed up his hand. That's part of the reason he struggled this year. There's nothing you can do about it. Guys are going to follow through and hit helmets. It's indefensible to fix. So, I don't know. But he's not going to run a lot to take those kind of shots. So, Wisconsin's offensive line is not my concern. They've got a pretty good one. It's not unreal, but it's pretty good. If they can get one receiver, Colby Young or better, to go with those running backs, they could be better than they were this year, even against next year's schedule. It's not fun. They're not beating Bama. They're not beating Oregon. Those kind of, I'm sure Badger fans are throwing things to TV. At least one of those games is probably going to be a 30-point game.
They probably won't now, though. You've purchased credibility with Badger fans. After you predicted the record this year. You were literally dead on.
Well, I mean, next year they could be 8-4, but be way better because the schedule didn't have Alabama and Oregon on last year. I mean, moving forward, if Wisconsin, just generically, if they don't get the Van Dykes of the world and up, they won't even go 7-5 because the Big Ten got a way better, not a little bit, way better, and especially better outside the numbers where Wisconsin does not do as well. I mean, Oregon's going to have a ton of speed. USC and UCLA are going to have a ton of speed. And I think we've all seen what Washington's receiving corps can do. If you don't have guys outside, like in this portal and these recruits, you're going to get murdered. This is a really important time for the Badgers.
That's a fantastic point, Brian. That really, in reality, the 4 teams that were brought in, I don't say 4 guys, but the 4 teams
fits for Wisconsin
are bad matchup historically for Wisconsin, right? Yeah. Like those aren't the teams that Wisconsin has had a ton of success against. Now, I mean, any one of those teams with a bad quarterback is beatable, obviously. But yeah, that's a really good point. Here's the thing with the Finn Van Dyke, and I agree with you on McCord. Like, I think you take him out of that offense, take him away from Marvin Harris. I don't know what he does that's really special. He's got a good arm. He's got good size.
What?
I think there's a little bit of recruiting pedigree still with him where people look at that recruiting ranking and maybe think there's more under the hood. I don't know.
He's been 3 years removed from high school. Here's my rule. I've tracked this. If you are a good quarterback that's like 3-1 touchdown to interception before you throw 400 passes in college, you've went above the mean. The court is kind of like that, but again, look who's throwing to. Tight ends, NFL, multiple NFL wide receivers, always running backs have a chance to play in the NFL. It's ridiculous. And he still wasn't a big game player. Now, he had a good drive there at the end against Notre Dame, a few good drives against Michigan, some really key throws, but it's too much of this. I don't think he's that guy. I have no idea where he's going to end up. He's a Philly kid. I think he's from the same high school as Ogard, if I remember right. But at the same time, do you take a guy like that and hope he's got 2 years of eligibility, I believe? So maybe it works. I don't know. But I'd be pretty leery about him. I don't know. And again, I don't think he's a good enough runner to maximize the offense they're going to run.
Here's the thing with the Finn and Van Dyke compare. I feel like Finn, if he hits, probably has a little higher upside, but you're taking a bigger chance there. Does that feel like a
100%? That's like Van Dyke. If you get him a big play, you're going to have a couple of games at 350.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do that against Oregon, you can win. You going to do that with Kyle McCord? Probably not.
Right? You have to squint to see it, right? You're like, I don't know.
I'd lean on the negative there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we're on the kind of same page there. And to your bigger point, all of them are upgrades, right? That's the other thing where we talked about on a previous show. Not every portal guy's a home run, but if he can help you, let's say you end up with McCord or another quarterback. There's other quarterbacks they talk to. You're still getting better in that room, which does matter.
There's progress, and then there's, progress. Like if you get Cam Ward, you go 10-2 next year. Well, that's great. But, if you get Kyle McCord, you're 7-5, 8-4, but you're in every game. And if, somebody else kind of steps forward, maybe there's a receiver we don't know about. One of the receivers that was at Ohio State's in the portal, maybe he goes with Kyle to Wisconsin. Something like that. Anything's possible. I just think you're looking at a scenario where it's a building process. And Wisconsin has to sell to the administration about the coaches. If we take X number of players, and I know Wisconsin's administration is a little weary about doing things at a fast pace. We've talked about that before. But if you have success this year with some big name guys, works out, and let's just be honest, it makes the school a lot of money, they're going to be more open to it in the future. Very, very important.
That's true. All right. Coming up, we're going to take one more quick break. This is great, as always, with Brian. We're going to take one more quick break. We're just going to talk a little bit about the Leon Lowery commitment and that whole NIL agent kerfuffle. How many players fall into that trap and never fall out of it? Which Leon Lowery is luckily able to fall out of that trap, but how many more get snared into that? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the fastest independently growing daily fantasy platform in North America for a reason. It's the biggest for a reason. It's the most exciting and easiest way to play daily fantasy. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections and you watch the winnings roll in. It's fun. It's fast. You can make your picks in 40 seconds, 60 seconds. You make your picks. You pop off it. If you do it right, the money rolls in. It's fun. It's easy. It's simple. With Apple Pay, the quick and easy deposits are happening all the time. It's, again, just the easiest, fastest, most enjoyable way to play daily fantasy. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's get Brian back on. So, Brian, the last time we talked, I told you, hey, we got a commitment. Hey, we also lost that commitment immediately because his NIL agent got into his head and whispered some like WandaVision voodoo magic. He has since recommitted to the Badgers after firing his NIL agent, Leon Lowery. I want to just start really quickly. He's 6'4", 240, Syracuse. So he's played in a real college football conference. He was productive. How important is it just to add some pieces early in the portal?
You got to get momentum. If he's a kid that started in the Power 5, that's a decent starting point. Here's an example. Last year, Miami picked up KJ Cloyd from Louisville, and they got him like, who's that? He had, so-so stats through 4 years, but he'd still played 4 years of college football. He ended up being pretty good for Miami. Guys that have been through the system that are still getting offers, there's a reason. He maybe had a few injuries, this or that, but you're taking a lower risk with the experience. He knows how to be a grown man away from home, etc. That's why the portal is so popular, and it's ticking off a lot of high school coaches because some of their fringe kids aren't getting offers now. There's no fixing that. But if you get guys like that on your roster, and you have, especially for Wisconsin, they're not getting the 5-star kid out of Nowheresville, Louisiana that's 300 pounds, okay, to play D-tackle. It's going to LSU or A&M. You know what I mean? You got to take those kids that are juniors and seniors in the portal. You got to win more experience. This is a way to do it. It's huge for the Badgers, especially to get it early. Maybe you can get a couple others because I already know flat out some of these guys are trying to pull their friends and other good players, even if they're halfway across the country, come play with them. A lot of the recruiting is player to player. I don't have any influence with it. Like in recruiting, I go to all these events. I have zero. We have no idea. It's like pulling over the card on the river in gambling. You don't know what it is. You're just going, well, there it is. It's a king. There it is. It's a 3. You don't know. So it's wild. But if you get that first one to go, you build your chips up because then maybe some more guys want to come with you. Again, that's why you need to get Van Dyke or somebody like that to commit pretty soon. It's going to influence other guys.
The dominoes fall. Hey,
yes.
This recruitment, the Lowery one, it felt like a movie, right? Where the protagonist, he fell into, and then he pulled it out at the end, and everyone's happy, and he did it. And how many kids, and certainly would never ask for names, but any stories, like how many kids get ensnared by people like this, and they don't do the Leon Lowery thing where they get rid of the grifter and they go where they really want to go.
How many stories do you have in how many hours?
It's that bad, huh?
No, it's daily. I've been saying it for a while. How like in ESPN, when a case comes out, so-and-so's under an NCAA investigation, pick the school, sport, whatever. Well, I guarantee you it's happened, but ESPN's not privy to this. The FBI has done this on some people's doors about spending money on things illegally. And part of that is recruiting. Like they root for pick a school and the cash is flowing. Why did you take out $200,000 yesterday? Things like that out of your bank account. Some of these kids come from really crappy backgrounds. And there's a kid I know that changed the year. Somehow he got all these credits magically and changed the year he's out of school right now. And some of the people I know at the school he was at were like, he didn't tell anybody he was changed. They didn't know what school he was going. They didn't know when that 100% street agent type situation. And that's not uncommon. How often does that end well is the question. Maybe it will for him because he'll somehow slip through, but everybody knows where he's like that. It's this dirty deal. It usually ends bad in some way, shape, or form, but it happens. And then sometimes the kids are led to the wrong school. And I think this kid was too, but that's where it gets really screwed up because if you start your career bad, it's not that you can't recover and the portal helps, but it's still lost time. The NFL watches every minute of your tape. You're trying to get to the league. Everybody's trying to get to the league. So, if you pick the wrong people to help you, and it happens a lot, that can be a path to not only not having an opportunity in the NFL, you may be at a school and they pull your scholarship because it's not working out. They just pull and you got nowhere to go. It can go wrong really quick.
If I made you commissioner of the NCAA for 60 days, what's the first thing you would do? Is there a way to make this better?
I'd have to be, the problem is a lot of the people that are big boosters that cause problems, they're big boosters for school X. They're also big boosters for Republicans and Democrats.
Right. No,
they're interested in helping you until they find out their fundraising changes.
Yeah.
How do you fix that?
I mean, it's something politics have been working on trying to fix. I mean, it's been a problem in politics for how long? So maybe you don't.
Civilization began.
Yeah, I guess you don't fix it. Do you think there is I know certain places have floated an idea of colleges taking over the payment of NIL to athletes directly, maybe removing collectives. Is that just changing how the money's transferred from point A to point B?
That's completely garbage because I know firsthand, and I was part of this in the last few days, seeing it up close. When people want a player, there is no means they will not go to get them. And here's the back end of this with boosters. Some, not all. Mm-hmm. Some of them, they want their school to win. They don't care. Just, as long as we win, I'm cool. There are some, it's not good enough to win. They have to be a main reason why.
Right. They want the credit.
They want to be, I'm the one who paid him. Literally. There is no fixing that. That's called ego, anger, stupidity, hubris, all those things mixed into one big bag. Mm-hmm. And there's a kid I know, big time player, that it's a pissing match because certain schools really don't like each other. And he's looking at a couple of them, and the boosters are not happy. There's no way this ends well.
Right. Because now you have rich people in a bidding war with ego and arrogance.
100%.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Brian, this is why I love having you on the show, man. I'm telling you, at some point we're still going to have our Locked On Badgers After Dark with whiskey and bourbon, and we're going to chop it up, really get down into the weeds and something.
I think we have to play jump around at least twice during that show.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I love it. He is Brian Smith at FBScout_Florida. We are always smarter because he's on the show. Go follow him. Brian, thank you so much as always. And we'll talk again, I'm sure, either this week, next week, as portal stuff continues to happen.
Absolutely, brother. Look forward to it.
Later, Brian.